Sriram Karri. He completed his graduation in arts from the BVK Degree College in Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. He was a member of Young Orators Club Secunderabad. Starting his career as a journalist, he worked with the Indian Express, the business publication division of the Indian Express Group, and the Deccan Chronicle. He has been a columnist for the Hindu and wrote a fortnightly column, Sedition and Perdition, for the New Indian Express. He has contributed to the Comment is Free section of The Guardian and currently writes for India Inc. blogs at the New York Times. He is an English language novelist, writer, and columnist. His novel, The Autobiography of a Mad Nation, was longlisted for the Man Asian Literary Prize in 2009. His first book, The Spiritual Supermarket, was published by Mosaic Books for the Indian subcontinent in 2007. It was longlisted for the Vodafone Crossword Book Award non-fiction category in 2008. I now invite Sriram Karri Garu to address us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Shilpa Krishna Garu. I'm very grateful to the SJaipalReddy Memorial Foundation for this opportunity to be part of this gathering. I feel a little bit like a batsman who would walk into bat knowing that Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli will follow after. So with Professor Kumar and Justice Chelameswar coming behind in the order, truly makes me nervous. The theme, celebrating democracy. Now, any one of you who's part of this interaction virtually from any part of the world would possibly more likely than not be logging in from some kind of a democratic context. We sent you an invitation saying, some people will meet up on Zoom, they'll talk about democracy. Would you like to join in? And somewhere you voted with your sense of empowerment or the ability to make a decision saying, well, I would like to be part of this conversation. And you logged in. It seems so easy, so normal, so natural that you be empowered so. Human history, its study will tell you, it took centuries and centuries of struggle by millions of people denied that opportunity that you have today. To just log in using your phone, to listen to some people talk, ask them a few questions, looks like the most simplest of normalist of realities of ours, yet it comes after a very, very long struggle. And the struggle was very simply this. Of all the possible ways in which you can put words and phrases together, nothing hurts those in power as much as everyone is equal or everyone should be treated equal. There have been people who have shaped human history for 5,000 plus years who hated the very notion of this. And therefore, from the first tribe that was possibly created as humans moved from being food hunters and gatherers to agriculturists, they settled down. The first tribe, you had to create a tribe to protect yourself from wild animals. You just discovered fire some time ago and now you growing food. You have to save the tribe, and therein was created this belief that one, you are weaker, more inferior. You are a means for the survival and thriving of the tribe. The tribe should be led by somebody appointed by God or is otherwise proven so superior. And from there on, inequality. The notion that people are different and some set of people deserve something more, an absolute whimsical power, so that the collective may survive, has largely led mankind's history. The notion, as Shilpa referred to, about 2 centuries, less than 3 centuries old, in a complete sense of a social contract, refuting the divine rights theory, that every single one here is equal. In any sense should be treated equal by a context of a legal system, and to create social systems in which this legal system will get institutionalized, culturally internalized, individually internalized, was the dream of democracy. Now, how democratic are we as a country? How far has democracy come? What are the flaws of democracy? What are the threats to democracy? These are themes on which, for the last 250 years, the best of minds of humanity have been engaged on. One, for any country to be able to give to its citizens a fair sense of liberty, freedom, sense of equality, rule of law, strong democratic institutions, it itself has to be sovereign. So democratic lovers of democracy worldwide would also have to upfront at a macro level keep an eye on the global order. You cannot have enslaved nations keeping their citizens free internally. Consider the case of Ukraine, for example. So a reasonably robust, free, democratically managed world order is significant. Second, how democratic is each country which is a democracy, and what do we do with countries that are by definition not democracies? These are themes on which I'm sure the next two speakers will expound on, speak a lot, analyze. I would like to give you a very micro individual perspective. I look around and ask myself, what are the most undemocratic contexts I run into? Not as a journalist. I will not speak about the political class, the bureaucracy, the judiciary here as such, but of how democratic are you and I? How democratic are those little institutions on which you and I have a much greater say? How democratized are our households? Now, two institutions that I find particularly dictatorial in Indian society. One is the building apartment complex in every city. You know, every building apartment will have 100 flats, 200 flats, 500 flats. There will be a society running it. I find them to be big threats to democratic thinking. Nobody really is shocked any longer by the reality that if you belong to a certain religion, you can't buy a flat in certain buildings across this country. It's a very simple reality. At the same time, this is a reality in which common people like you and me have an extraordinary say. There is no larger intervention there of an assembly, a parliament, a bureaucratic order, a judicial order, etc. It is just 100, 200, 500 odd common people living in a secular democratic context in modern day 2022, who in the one institution they get to run it very dictatorial. What kind of lifts are reserved for only the residents? Where do maids and drivers are allowed to take a lift? This is the kind of undemocratic system that gets normalized in a very common microscopic order. And then we are surprised that the aggregate order of millions of such apartments is not as democratic as we feel we deserve or we demand. Second, we talk about the freedom of speech, we talk about the freedom of individuals, we talk about the conflict of a sense of social order being maintained by this country at very difficult times when we became free post-World War, 1947, partition, a constitution was given. And then from there, the last 75 years, what kind of a track record we've had as a country? Well, very simple. Look around yourself again and check the WhatsApp groups you're part of. Just the WhatsApp groups, your family WhatsApp groups, your school friends WhatsApp groups, dictatorial, autocratic. If you want to understand the definition of fascism, look at the admin's behavior in your friend's WhatsApp group. These are the contexts that I find more frightening than the systematic arm twisting of the fourth estate and reducing it to a nothing. I find it more frightening than any threat coming at a higher level, because this is where the normalization happens. I truly believe in a system which is, however half big democracy, it will be impossible for a dictatorial imposition unless that behavior is pre-normalized by common people. There has to be a prior justification. In other words, and I'm asking you this question on behalf of those millions of people who fought living in dictatorial, autocratic, monarchical systems and dreamt of a democracy someday where you and I can be as free as we are. We owe an answer to them. Will we cherish this gift we have got, or will we squander and surrender it? Yesterday was September 17th, and I had a interaction with somebody who's a grandson of a Nizam, or great grandson of the Nizam. And we had a little discussion on WhatsApp. And I felt an angst he expressed unwittingly, saying, if not for Sardar Patel and that action, I would have been the Nizam and we would have been a slave. It came very strongly from him. Look how you're talking to me. And I realized you and I are lucky. We're born in a system where nobody can consider us a slave by definition, not by de jure definition at least. The question is, do we care about it? Do you care about the fact that the most powerful person in this country can be made to be equal to you by a rule of law? That framework exists and you only have to stand for it. You only have to ensure that you do not give it away. So essentially what I would like to ask you is this: leave the macro debate for a second and ask yourself, where you have influence, are you democratic? And as you walk every minute of your life, as you do every interaction at a very, very normal level, at your airport security, at your taxi, getting into a taxi, at your office, in the lift, at the supermarket, are you standing up for these three simple things? If you run into somebody who's more powerful and would like to tell you you are inferior by definition, by stature, you do not deserve the equality, do you have it in you to muster up the courage to ask them a question or to just ask a question? Second, if you find within your sight a system that is being unfair to somebody else, somebody weaker than you, are you able to stand up for them? That little change you will make. That very little change. And third, as you go about it, are you able to constantly realize and assert the rights that are given to you? The rights by which, in some sense, you are not a slave. Do we care enough? And that's all I believe it is. So whether India will be a greater democracy or a lesser democracy tomorrow will depend on how you and I behave. Do you take the responsibility to be a more democratic individual or not? Don't forget, the only difference between democracy and rest of all those isms, monarchy, military dictatorship, theocracy, political dictatorship, and so on and so forth, and democracy is partly under siege, is that systems would like to reduce you to a means, to a nothing, to a inconsequential entity. Do you going about your daily life with all its limitations have it in you to realize, just like the best of religion was a case of man designing a God in his own image, democracy was a government designed with the citizen as its primary iota, its image. So in other words, are you sub-sovereign? Are you yourself sovereign enough, an entity, that nobody can write off your rights, and anybody who challenges your rights or the challenges the rights of other people, erades them, degrades them, all it will take to reassert is to realize it and start the fight back with something as simple as raising a question. And I believe, therefore, this is not a battle of one hegemonic fascist party come to overtake the entirety of India. No, it is a billion such interactions and clashes. Democracy could lose at every micro transaction. All you have to do to save democracy is to understand it, is to be a little more democratic yourself. Listen to people who you disagree with. Fight for the rights of people you hate. When facing with authority, refuse to be subordinate. Next time you meet an IAS officer, don't call them sir. Just call them Mr. or Miss and their last name and see what happens. Start challenging authority. Viscerally hate the idea that you're inferior to anybody and anything. It will make you a little unpopular. It will make you a little less easy to get things done. But it will make the air around you freer. That's how democracy smells like. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for raising the issue of power and how collective can survive, the struggles that is important for where we are today, the social contract of Rousseau, how democratic is the countries that celebrate democracy or claim democracy, how democratized are we, the undemocratic systems that gets normalized at a micro level, which actually reflects the macro mindset. The threats that you mentioned in the micro, which is a major concern that we all need to ponder upon. Do we surrender or do we fight back to withhold the struggles of our previous generations? Do we stand up for others? What's our role or how accountable we are? How do we handle authority? Can we even challenge or even afford to challenge, which that you have raised? But I think we need to ponder upon these. And now we move to the, thanks for the wonderful words.